right, guys, well, welcome back to another episode of No Puns Allowed. This week in college football, by the way, I'm Paige, that's Adam. Oh, nice little crack.
Try to time that up well.
Adam, the only way to describe this week in college football is if college football sat down and hadn't eaten and decided to drink a Cutwater margarita and got a little too buzzed.
God damn it. But then
that is what the last 72 hours of college football has been like.
Well, and then kept drinking.
And
right?
then just kept going.
And for some reason decided it would be a good idea to talk in a microphone. So, craziest 72 hours ever of college football? Like, yes. Legitimately?
Like, legitimately. This is, like, concrete things that have happened. This is not like, oh, we've got groomers. Oh, we've got, like, Lane Kiffin being fired on a tarmac. This is, like, concrete things happening, things that weren't rumored to be happening, things rumored that everyone thought was a joke that happened, like, the most crazy things. But we have to start with, obviously, Saturday.
Yes.
College football. Well, we can start with the fact that it was a great weekend for college football and football in general during the Thanksgiving weekend. We hope you all had a fantastic Thanksgiving. But Saturday, obviously, the game.
Yes.
Ohio State, Michigan. Now, I will just like to say I did not think Michigan had a shot in this game. So I'm going to let you have the floor because you've been our resident Harbaugh apologist.
I am.
And
I really
you know
am.
what? Have your moment. Have your moment here, Kramer.
Well, so, like, you've got so many programs that are in disarray right now, right? You're a Florida State, you're Miami, I mean, there's a ton. Like, I'm targeting Florida schools. Nebraska. Harbaugh has won at a reasonable level at Michigan, gotten his ass kicked by Ohio State and other rivals, and we just shit on him for 6 years. Now, he has his quirks and his khakis, and he's an easy target. But I kind of love that they just rolled into this game as like a 6.5 point dog. It's very interesting line movement, by the way. That line stayed as is. It came down to 6. Like something was up. Yeah. And then just, I think, Paige, the most striking part, beyond the fact that Harbaugh now, unless my Hawkeyes have something to say about it, is going to be, the number 2 seed potentially in the playoff?
Yep.
Like that? Like, rarely do you see a moment change, like a narrative about a coach change like that. But I think the part that was probably most overwhelming is how soft Ohio State looked.
Yes.
Didn't they? They looked soft.
This is sort of like the Ohio State we saw at the beginning of the year where we were like, oh, they're going to recover. They're going to recover. They're going to recover. They did throughout the season. They looked a little bit better. They went straight back. And I don't know we've seen it with a Justin Fields where no one thought that they were like tough enough to handle things. And clearly they handled their business last year in the playoff. But this was sort of like, okay, they're almost there. They're going to get there. It's going to happen. This is Michigan. Of course they're going to choke this away. I mean, my thought process the entire game was, oh my God, this is setting up for such a terrible meltdown for Michigan because we have seen them meltdown before against Michigan State. So it was one of those things where I was like, I can't believe what I'm watching and this is real. And then there was like no time left and I was like, okay, it happened. Like this happened for Jim Harbaugh. He finally beat them. This was after a year where he took a cut. Buyout was lowered, everything else. And it's like, this guy's going to make the playoff. This is really happening. Like you said, he does make himself an easy target. He did not help himself by making that comment about Ryan Day, saying that some of us start at third and think we hit like a home run.
It's a great comment, though. Like,
it was hilarious. It was hilarious. But again, like, okay, you've done it once. Like, let's take a moment. I'm going to tell him to slow down a bit. Beat Iowa, get in the playoff, win a playoff game. I want to see it. I want to see it happy for them. I mean, I'm rooting for another team because their school/program is in absolute disarray and chaos because of something very shocking that happened this weekend. But you know what? I was glad for Jim Harbaugh. And you know what? Shout out to him and his wife also for donating all of the incentives he gets for like reaching certain milestones this year. They're donating it back to Michigan's athletic department to help with some of the stuff that happened during COVID and pay cuts and things like that. So I think that's really special. And I think they're good people. I really do. And I'm a Niner fan. Like I like Jim Harbaugh, but it's been so easy to do that. I also will say he finally, this game, something that like Michigan is notorious for mostly under Jim Harbaugh is playing it safe. And this was a game, even when they were ahead, they were not playing it safe. They weren't playing it just to keep their lead. They were playing, and that is what they needed to do. That was the difference between them winning and losing against Ohio State every year. And so I appreciated the risk taking. I appreciated going for things and actually being a little aggressive in terms of coaching.
Gaddis at OC was phenomenal. The scripting on that game was phenomenal. Couple other takeaways. If we're going to be giving Mel Tucker $95 million, what are we giving Jim Harbaugh, who just took a pay cut?
After this year, what are you doing?
I'm just like, that's a real interesting situation. But you got to figure that out.
I mean, there are a lot of coaches we need to discuss about how much we're paying certain coaches and not others now.
And we were going to talk about that next. And then the only other thing, and I wanted to bring this up, wasn't on our rundown, but Hutchinson
Yes.
I think personally, now I'm probably going to will this home. I think he's got a real friggin' shot to win the Heisman.
Yeah. Oh,
I think when we looked
at CJ Stroud and said, hey, there are games where he has to play his best and he can easily win this Heisman because you're up against great competition. These moments, Aiden Hutchinson played fucking fantastic. Sorry to use the F word, but like,
wow, I don't think you've ever done that here.
He's also spurned the NFL to come back. Even with all the stuff with Harbaugh, like this wasn't a guarantee. Like this wasn't just like gonna happen. Like a lot of things had to go right for this to work. And for you to come back and have this sort of moment, especially against a rival, you're both ranked. Now he's he's playing in a championship game. He's playing in a playoff. And I know, again, we're not going to be able to have that go into voting. But again, he's played in huge games and had huge performances. I don't think it's completely out of the realm either.
Stroud's out. Right. And I shouldn't say out of the running. He could very much still win this award. He's not playing. Bryce Young obviously can win. If he beats Georgia, I think he wins the award.
Yeah.
Hutchinson, Iowa's tackles are not very good. Their center is amazing. The outside of that line, if he has 2 or 3 sacks, and he had 3 against Ohio State, he was 15-1. And I bet him at one point, like this past weekend. I looked a couple hours later. He was 70. I can't stop betting on the Heisman page.
I think that's honestly been your problem this year.
Oh my God. I still have my Kenny Pickett 75-1 ticket that I'm hanging on to. But I'm just saying, before we get into coach stuff.
To be fair, he could potentially. I mean, Wake's not a bad team.
He's like 16-1 now, Pickett. So I'm just saying with Hutchinson, and I just looked, and I don't see any odds up right now.
Okay.
I think he's got a real chance to win that award. Yeah. So and granted, if he does, he's going to torture Iowa. I think it's we'll talk about Iowa. I think it's a bad matchup, but it's exciting because I want a defensive player to win this award. And there are 2 in him and Anderson for Alabama that I think are deserving in a year that's just been so strange when it comes to the Heisman. But holy shit, Lincoln Riley to USC. I think if we were to show our G chats of the last couple of days, it's largely just all caps of like, oh shit. Oh my God. I need a nap. Holy shit. Right. So this was genuinely shocking because there was steam to LSU. He very creatively said, I'm not going to be the next coach at Louisiana after Bedlam. And then boom, the next day, this happens. So what are your first thoughts on this?
As a Pac-12 fan, this is the best thing that could have ever happened to our conference because this is about so much more than just Lincoln Riley coming to coach at USC. This is people on the West Coast are going to give a shit about college football. And that he brings, it's not even just Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley, the recruiter, we've already seen it start. Like you wrote on this, we already talked about there are people there are talent that are at Texas, there's talent that's at Alabama that would have gladly stayed to play for Lincoln Riley at USC. The talent that is going to come in, I think this happens way quicker than anyone thinks. This isn't a couple-year rebuild. This is like, hey, maybe next year it's a little shaky. We'll see how it goes. But I don't even know that next year is going to be shaky. And we needed someone besides Oregon to really bring this back. And I know we had moments with UCLA this year and all of that stuff. But for me, it's like, this was the home run hit they needed. And what's so crazy about this is that we've been talking about Lincoln Riley in the NFL a lot. Like that has been the rumor for the past couple of years. So many people have checked in to see if he wants to go. And he's like, no, I'm not leaving Oklahoma. No. Then you have Oklahoma going to the SEC. Okay. And I don't want to hear the narrative of him running from the SEC. No, he's being smart. Like, I'm sorry. Like, just because you're mad that, like, he's not going to have to play as tough a schedule as people in the SEC, who cares? He's still going to get to the playoff. His road to the playoff is easier. His, like, recruiting is a million times easier at USC than it would be at, I mean, LSU will be fine, but, I mean, you get to keep LA talent in LA when NIL is a thing. I mean, there's so many positives. This was the most perfect thing that could have happened. I also love that there was no sort of like rumor mill of like, okay, is he coming there? It was just like, oh my God, Lincoln Riley to USC, and it's done. And that was first of all, for anyone who's a college football editor or anything else writer, you know that that's the best way for these things to go down. So you're not having to worry and redo all of this stuff.
Oh, it's the absolute worst.
I mean, this was best case scenario. Pac-12 wise, I mean, our commissioner now needs to be like, look, we have this guy. For me, selfishly, all I'm thinking about is, oh my God, we're going to get such a massive TV deal, and I'm going to be able to watch my basketball team, because I went to a basketball school, on normal network television. Like, we aren't going to have to see like late night Pac-12 games on Pac-12 network that no one else can watch. We're actually going to make the most of this because the team that's going to be really, really good, sorry, Oregon, no offense, USC is it. Like, it is it. And maybe it's just because they've been bad and had so many different things happen and all of that post Pete Carroll. No, the USC is like back. Like, I'm sorry, Texas, we're taking that from you. USC is back, and the Pac-12 is back. In my opinion, that was the longest rant of all time. But I've literally never been more happy.
I love that your mind went to Pac-12, your basketball team.
Yeah, my basketball. That's what it's all about.
So Paige,
it's a win-win. It's a win for everybody. That's why, like, adding and you know what? Adding Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC for those teams, that was their way of like, okay, these are like conglomerate programs that we can add and we'll bring that money in, blah, blah, blah. For the Pac-12, bringing Lincoln Riley in is like bringing those teams into the SEC. It makes you that much more powerful, despite the fact that my team's going to lose to them every year by 1,000. I don't care. This is going to be so great for the conference in general.
Okay, so a couple of things. I don't disagree with anything. I wrote basically that this is as sure of a thing as we can get. I mentioned in the story Bryce Young and Bijan Robinson.
Yes.
I've done stories on both of these kids. Bijan, who I met in person in Arizona, who I remember greeting in Tucson, also played like the greatest half of high school football I've ever seen. And I remember he was wearing a USC pullover. And he was like really at that time ready to go to Texas. But hearing him talk, he was like, man, I'd really wish USC was like in a better position. I'm paraphrasing. But you could tell he loved Reggie Bush. There was a USC coach, I believe, that night at that game who I was talking to. Mm-hmm. And Clay Helton, everything else, right? So imagine, and Bryce Young talked to his dad, same thing. Even at the moment before Alabama, it was like, man, gosh, USC's right there. Grew up a USC fan. There is now it's a generation of kids from California who did not attend USC. In fact, I went back. You look at, I believe, the 2020 recruiting class where you've got CJ Stroud, you've got DJ, you've got Bryce Young, all from California, from Southern California. None of them stayed. I think USC in that class, and I put this in the article, had 2 of the top 40 recruits in the state of California. I will bet you, moving forward, it will be shocking if they don't get 7 of the top 10 in California. It's going to be, and this is it. You got to win games. You got to scheme, but they got a commitment already. His former quarterback at Oklahoma, number 2 player in the country, like that in a couple of days. And so here's the trick. Georgia's doing this. Kirby Smart had the best recruiting class in the country, largely, or one of the top 2 for about 4 or 5 years. And they've assembled a roster of absolute monsters. Literal monsters. USC's is going to look a little different.
Yes.
But he is going to assemble a yearly roster of monsters. Winning, and by the way, the rest of the Pac-12 will come. There's Alabama, LSU. Like, Georgia goes up against other monsters. Like, that's the way that we recruit. Oregon can maybe compete physically. 3 or 4 years, personally, I think USC is going to look like a different team. I think USC is going to be so much better than the rest of that conference. I think it's a brilliant hire. I think there's a ton of pressure on him. I think he can handle it. Yeah. And it really comes down to a very simple thing, Paige. Can you get talent? And the answer already is yes. It took a goddamn day and he got some talent. And that is awesome. I think he's going to be a home run there.
Yeah, so we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Oklahoma side of this because, one, how painful is this that this guy leaves? It's tough. They love him, obviously. He's done a great job there. He was set up to be in a very great position. Totally understand. Stoops coming back to coach the bowl game. And it just... Here's the thing. Oklahoma fans were very, very upset about it. And it even got to the point on college football Twitter where they were breaking down like taxes and things like that. And by the way, the fact that like viral tweet, none of us actually believed that Lincoln Riley got both of his houses bought for him. It was just like sort of a funny way of like, that could be real because like he left and it was just like that and it was a done deal. But like there was no, on my end, I wasn't like, oh, he's leaving because he had to live in Norman, Oklahoma. It was like, no, this is a great opportunity for him. And his path to the playoff is a lot easier. Recruiting is a lot more fun. And it seemed it is literally the most perfect pick I've ever seen. And I hope years from now I'm not on Old Takes Exposed when this blows up. But it just don't see it going poorly. Like it was amazing. I love it and I think it's great. But for Oklahoma, what do you do next? Like who do you bring in? Especially because stuff's been moving so quickly. I mean, their athletic director said, like, we already tried getting Bob back here, guys. That's not happening. But if you're Oklahoma, who do you bring in to sort of keep the momentum going? Because you're moving to the SEC and you cannot afford to have some tough years. Like that could get ugly very quickly.
You know, Oklahoma we're about to find out how it's a great job. Okay, it's a great job, but we haven't learned how great of a job. I'm an Iowa fan. Bad comparison because Iowa is not in the same class of job as Oklahoma, but Iowa has had the same coach for a bazillion years. The same two coaches for a bazillion years. You had Bob Stoops. You had a beautiful, clean handoff to Lincoln Riley, a la Ryan Day. So we don't know the hierarchy of jobs. We just learned a little bit about the hierarchy of jobs. We know USC and LSU are great jobs.
Yes.
We don't know exactly what Oklahoma is going to attract. So the name all of a sudden before we're coming on is Matt Rule. Hey, get Matt Rule out of the NFL and pay his huge buyout. And will that be a guy? Venables at Clemson. Look, I've sat with him. I like him. But is that guy, like the guy needs a handler on the sideline to stop himself from killing a referee? I'm kind of half joking. I have to make sure people know. But like, is that a mentality? He truly needs a...
But also, like, we've seen even when Dabo talks about him, too, like, he's a different breed of, like, football guy. Like, he's the epitome of football guy. And in this world, like, I hate to say this. I'm not saying that kids are soft. It's a little different. You have to be a little bit more careful. And I think he's recognized that. And don't get me wrong. I mean, Venables has been up for every head coaching job since Clemson won a national championship. This is every year everyone is checking to see if this guy wants to take it. And it's very curious
why he hasn't gotten one. And I've talked to different people about that. And I've gotten mixed response.
Because some people will say it's because he doesn't want one, which I would understand. I also think the other part of it is when you become a head coach, there's just way more to it than just being a coordinator. Like, I'm not diminishing what they do, but there's way more off the field shit that you have to deal with, and he doesn't strike me as someone who wants to deal with any of that.
I find him he's phenomenal at what he does, and he's got obvious ties to that school.
Yes.
I think it would be a win. I'm curious if Oklahoma fans think it would be a win. Like,
when that rumor was going around, they seemed all in on that. I personally, I wasn't as excited as everybody else. Maybe it's just because let
me ask you this, and this is a good transition to Brian Kelly too.
Jesus.
And LSU. If you're Luke Fickell, would you rather have Oklahoma or Notre Dame? And he's a guy with Midwest roots. Whatever. What job would you rather have?
Notre Dame, because here's
the
other part of it. Like Notre Dame. We talked about this before. They have. Their helmet helps them and their jersey and that logo helps them get in places that maybe other schools wouldn't, and in Oklahoma certainly wouldn't, because they have to play in a championship game every year. Notre Dame doesn't have to. Okay, they have no plans of that. You have those ties. It's essentially his dream job, and I think it's a perfect fit. We will move into that now in terms with Brian Kelly.
Holy shit.
Okay. Let me just take you through. I mean,
I got a rant
thought it was
about
a
this,
joke.
by the way, too.
What?
I've got a rant. Not now. Set the table, and then I've got a little bit of a mini rant about this whole thing.
Okay. I see the rumors that LSU is going all in on Brian Kelly. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way that the fairy godmother is coming in, like he said in quotes, with a $250 million check and showing Brian Kelly's wife, and they're leaving to go to LSU. There's just no way. He is so happy there. The setup he has there is perfect. I've sung his praises as a coach. He's an excellent coach. This is not a bad
really
hire
good coach
at all. This is not a bad hire whatsoever. To leave your team that is potentially in a playoff position and have it go down the way that it went down. This was so fast that I made a joke on Twitter about him, like, that if you haven't seen this picture, there's a picture of him holding like files and he's like doing the peace sign with a bunch of his players. And I tweeted it being like, when everyone's talking about you getting the LSU job and you have no interest in it. I got old takes exposed this week because of that, because it just, and I mean, I tweeted immediately after. I was like, that's on me, guys, with the clown emoji, because like I honestly didn't believe, and I think if you asked anyone in this industry, they would have been like, no, Brian Kelly's not leaving for LSU, and especially not right this second. It's going to take a bit. And we agree that LSU is, well, sort of agree that LSU is the best job in college football, but like, this is not how we expected it to go down whatsoever. And I mean, I understand the nature of the business, but this whole entire thing, down to the message he sent them, and I don't know if you heard the audio of his meeting today.
I did.
Just tough, but I want to give you the moment to go on your rant.
So it is a great hire. His contract is cartoonish. He's got the Mel Tucker contract plus an extra $500,000 retention bonus and a $500,000 bowl eligibility bonus, which is basically $1 million extra dollars a year. So we're talking about Saban-ish money, right? Mm-hmm. Nick Saban's worth $40 million a season.
By the way,
get into it. Yeah, just saying. So, okay, let's talk about leaving a team.
Yes.
Brian Kelly's reputation is that he's an asshole, and he's kind of earned that in some respects. He left Cincinnati very awkwardly. You look very startled that I said asshole about him, but he is. He's kind of.
I'm not startled at all. I'm just glad you said it. I didn't have to.
Well, okay, good. No, so because
I agree with you.
And this was not done well, but I feel for him and these coaches, Lincoln Riley, in a little bit, because there's no good way to do this.
No.
You're interviewing for a job. You've just been offered $100 million. Okay, for people out there to say like, well, that's abandoning your team. You're right. You're right. But I'm going to, in his instance, not double his pay, but you just $100 million more or less guaranteed. Guys, the word's going to get out. You can't control the message. How do you handle it? He could have handled it better. The speech wasn't great. I get it. The players, and there's been a podcast about this, players have been pretty cool. Actually, players for Oklahoma, Notre Dame seem to kind of get it.
Yes.
But I just think the people bashing these coaches for leaving. Yes, he's leaving a potential playoff team. That's fucked up. It's weird, okay? But he's leaving a potential playoff team for one of the best jobs in college football, and he got the bag. Like, big time.
I think the other part that people are forgetting is that what is the number one thing in college football?
Money.
Recruiting.
Oh.
Recruiting. Well, yes, recruiting is the number one thing in terms of making your team good. And guess what? There's an early signing window, and if you don't have your coach before that, kids are going to sign other places. Kids are going to go other places. You have to solidify who your coach is before this happens. We're doing a two-beer episode.
Well, I got a lot to say. Also, my throat's a little dry, so it's out of necessity. Okay. No, but you're right. You're absolutely right.
They have to do that. So again, it's not on. That's partially why these schools are reaching out now. Like they very like. I'm sure that if you asked Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley, they would rather have waited until the season was over to do this. But that is just not.
The whole thing sucks.
That's just not how this sport works. Yes, does there maybe need to be something done about that and we figure out a little bit better way to go about this? Sure, but again, it's just like any other like sport where there's like rules or like tampering things. Like that shit's gonna happen no matter what. So you just have to sort of go, okay, this sucks. I feel bad for the players. That's who everyone should focus on. The fan bases can relax. You're gonna lose guys. Don't say that, like, Lincoln Riley got choked up in his press conference about talking about Oklahoma. He truly does appreciate that. But this is an opportunity of a lifetime. And sometimes you do have to think about yourself. That's why when you talk about players, like, sometimes they have to do what's best for them. Like, it's okay sometimes to be selfish in this instant. And again, like, we don't know there was also a rumor that Brian Kelly's people reached out to Florida. Like, Brian Kelly was looking to leave. Like, he had reached his potential. Besides winning in the college football playoff, he had reached his potential at Notre Dame and what he felt like he could do there. So to be fair, okay, going to LSU and getting to the next level sort of makes sense. Like, some people are not like that. They don't want to have to strive for the next. They're very comfortable as is. These are some of the most competitive people in the world. Like, you have to understand that that's just going to happen.
I think, by the way, he's perceived as an asshole. But most everybody who perceives him as an asshole will also say LSU's floor just went way the hell up.
Oh my
and their
God,
ceiling
yes.
is still a championship. It's always a championship. And so that everything just changed. Like, he's going to make them so much better. And the recruiting's going to be fine because he recruited great at Notre Dame. And that's a much harder place to recruit. So I think it's a great hire. Let's really quickly hit on Notre Dame. They've got some great coordinators there that they could, Freeman in terms of the DC, who Kelly's trying to. And by the time this is out, who knows?
Someone's going to be hired. Yeah, someone's going to be hired in Notre Dame. That's the nature of this business these days.
It does seem like they're going to try and wait for Fickell, which I think is smart. And I think Fickell should absolutely take that job.
Yes. Absolutely
go. And if that's the case, Notre Dame will be in great shape. But Brian Kelly was comforting there. Like, this is a weird one. Lincoln Riley was comforting in Oklahoma, but Brian Kelly just went about his business and would win 10 games, and we'd say, they're going to get crushed in the playoff, but they'd make the playoff and then get crushed. So I think that's an enormous void to fill for them, considering how consistent they've been.
Yes. Something I do want to talk to you about is on the coaching front is a lot of, and this goes back to the rule thing to Oklahoma. Another name that was thrown out was Cliff Kingsbury. And somebody in a meeting asked me, how do you feel? Do you really think that there are college football jobs that are better than NFL jobs? And my argument to it is that there are just certain people that college football jobs are incredibly enticing. Now, Cliff Kingsbury is in a very different situation than Matt Rule is. I mean, his team is winning. He has this MVP potential quarterback. I understand, even though he should have played baseball for my baseball team. Anyway, I always have to get that in there. But here's the thing. A guy like Cliff Kingsbury, though, I could see him act first of all, I'm sure his agent was like, hey, just tweet that maybe this is happening. But the other part of this is I could see a Cliff Kingsbury being like a Nick Saban and being like, this is where I want to win and prove that I can win, because he's deeply rooted in Texas football and that kind of stuff is those guys are built different. And so I could absolutely
the timing is tough.
The timing is tough. If this was a year ago or even in 2 years from now, I could see him. The timing is really, really tough on that front, but I don't think it's out of the realm that Cliff Kingsbury could come back to college football. And people are like, why would they want to sit and recruit kids? Did you watch college football this weekend? Everybody was talking about how amazing college football was this weekend. There's a good side to it. So I do see there being potential. Don't get me wrong. I do think being in the NFL, there are a lot of other positives that you don't have to deal with, that you have to deal with in college football that suck, aka boosters. But but still, I think that, I don't know if you disagree, but I think Cliff Kingsbury strikes me as a guy that would.
I just found in my tweet, was featured in Awful Announcing, which a bunch of people were texting me about, of Adam Schefter.
We're on a roll this week.
I know,
Old Takes
right?
Exposed, Awful Announcing.
Yeah, because Adam Schefter tweets that about Cliff Kingsbury, about his contract expiring, and it's a fucking agent is just texting him hey, Adam, buddy, old pal, old chum, why don't you bump up my guy Cliff, because we're trying to get this deal done. Now, It depends on what he likes. We've talked about this with Joe Brady. Joe Brady didn't like recruiting, so he went to the NFL with Matt Rule. Joe Brady, who knows where he'll end up? Maybe back in college, maybe stay in the NFL as a coordinator. It hasn't exactly been great thus far. Who knows? It sucks not to have Joe Burrow, in conclusion.
Yeah.
I think really you don't know where people are. I will say this. Cliff seemingly has the setup in the NFL that you look for. A young quarterback who's awesome. A defense that is young and really good. A division that is seemingly aging and kind of weird.
It's teetering.
NFL changes so violently, right?
Yes.
And that's the difference between the NFL and college. If he goes to Oklahoma, he's going to win 10 games to eternity. He'll score 55 points a game.
Someone was like, he couldn't win at Texas Tech. I'm like, to be fair, it's Texas Tech. Like,
it's Texas Tech.
Like,
but no, I don't know what he's going to do. I just found the news kind of hilarious.
Everyone did. I think that part is so funny to me. But I don't think he's yes.
Well, no, by the way, Oklahoma's got to figure it out. And in Oklahoma, to come out and say, oh, you'd be floored at what the interest is for our job. Okay, buddy, then deliver that to me. That's a terrible quote if you're going to hire Joe Shithead coordinator. Right?
Wait. Speaking of terrible quotes from that press conference in Oklahoma was when they said, I'm sorry, I'm literally almost crying laughing thinking about it. I'm not even kidding. When he said that they would like to have a little bit more notice before Lincoln Riley left. AKA, buddy, the Big 12 would have loved some notice.
Bob Bowlesby is like, fuck you, buddy.
I'm legitimately, I seriously am tearing up. It's so funny to me that he would say that. And the internet just had a field day with that because
what a terrible
it's just the nature of the business. I think it's so funny too when we get this stuff happening. People have been quoting and posting videos of Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly saying oh, if a guy was in the transfer portal and left his team before the season, I would be questionable to get that guy. No. You guys, come on. If someone recorded every single thing that I said, which I voluntarily do, and you went back and checked all the things, there'd be so much. No one says everything right all the time. So
the dumb shitometer is very high. Okay,
yeah, exactly. So it's just come on. It is what it is. Move on. But I think we really did have one of the craziest coaching carousel things. And the other part of this is, again, the Notre Dame job seems like we're going to get the person that we sort of think we are going to get in that role. And I think Fickell is a guy who
I think it'd be a great hire.
They're willing to wait for and can. And I think he, out of respect for his playoff team,
which is awesome,
will see it out. But I think the Oklahoma job is very, very, very interesting. This could go any way.
By the way, real quick,
yes.
Florida hired its football coach.
Oh yeah, by the way, Washington, TCU, and Florida hired coaches.
Anything stand out? I like Napier. I think in a normal year, Napier is going to recruit well, should do well, has done an awesome job at Louisiana. Saban disciple. Should do well. I think Washington all of a sudden grabbing Fresno State's best pieces. That's been a program in disarray. You've got a quarterback that was at your school and transferred and then came back.
Yep.
And you have a coach that has won pretty much every
yes.
I think and then TCU with Sonny Dykes. I've always been a Sonny Dykes fan.
Yeah, that was a home run. But it's just sad that those things were completely buried.
Yes. Totally. I mean, Florida hired a football coach in a normal cycle that is a week long of news. And I'll say this, Paige, the one thing that pisses me off, the football on Saturday was so good. Yes. Michigan, the Iron Bowl was madness. Fucking overtime rule is terrible still. And then we didn't get to appreciate it. Also, championship week. This is a wonderful week of football. We're going to talk about it here momentarily. And this has been a disruption. I had to do locks. And also I had to write, for a community piece, wrote about Georgia. Who could beat Georgia? I'm writing this piece. I'm God, is anyone going to give a shit about who could beat Georgia right now?
That piece did very well, though. That piece.
Somebody read. Okay, good.
So people read it. So we're good.
Okay, good.
But I will say too, during all of this, if you've listened to this podcast before, my friend is Nick Saban's daughter. I text her And I was like, Kristen, please tell me that your dad is not retiring, because I personally cannot take any more shocking college football news. She's like, no, he's not retiring. I was like, she's like, wait, is there rumors? I'm like, no, it was a joke. I just like mentally need to know in writing that this is, she was like, oh, there are rumors. Well, because there's rumors always that like, oh, after this or whatever, but like, or he's going to coach for the next 10 years, whatever. Also buried in the content circus of this weekend was that video of Miss Terry after the Iron Bowl with
God,
Coach
adorable.
Saban. That was the cutest thing I had ever seen. We stand Miss Terry. She is the cutest thing of all time. So
I'm actually glad you brought that up before we get into games. Yes. Nick Saban, who hugged his wife, and I've stood next to Miss Terry on the sideline, and she's shaking. She's so nervous. Nick Saban won the Iron Bowl. It was kind of shocking.
Ugly.
It was anti-Alabama. It was gross. And for him to smile the way that he did was cool. And also, he had that rant. It's been a week, but he had his rant on his radio show about people appreciate, which was amazing. Where his voice constantly, it was a great rant on his radio show, which is awesome. But I think, and we'll talk about it as we preview teams, Alabama is mortal. This is not the normal Alabama team. Nick Saban in these moments is actually I love Nick Saban when they lose. I love Nick Saban when he knows he doesn't have the goods. By any standard, I would kill if Iowa had this kind of year.
Yeah.
Nick Saban knows, and you could see it in his expression. He told his players to have fun at the fucking Iron Bowl. Like, I told the guys to have fun. Like, who are you, sir? That I actually love the human Nick Saban, because he gets pissed when they're winning and he's not getting the most out of them. But in these moments, he's actually kind of a nurturer. And it's cool to see. You know what I mean?
Where they have to fight for these wins. And it makes, and this is part of it. I think that's sort of why he was saying that, is because it's like, it's so unfair to these players that like the expectation is to win by 1,000. And it's like, we forget, and we talked about this earlier in the year, winning is winning. If you win a football game, like, it's not an easy thing. Like, that's why even like Lane Kiffin getting Ole Miss to 10 wins this year, like, that's impressive. Like, that is, yes, he plays in the SEC. Like, this is a big deal for these programs. Like, we've been so spoiled with, and I've said this over and over again, we got so spoiled with the Clemson and Alabama showdowns for those like 3 years, and then completely spoiled with Joe Burrow and Joe Brady magic in LSU. Like, completely, that we forgot that, like, sometimes it's not always so dominant. And I think we're sort of heading, and this is a great segue into this, into a championship week where, like, the reality is there are a lot of things that could happen this weekend that we're not like, Alabama's going to blow out this team, or Clemson's in the ACC championship game, because they're not. It's just like, there's so many new things and exciting things that could happen this weekend. I literally cannot wait.
All right, so let's talk. Alabama and Georgia for the SEC championship. It feels like the most meaningful game. We both have it in our picks and pints.
Yes.
So do we want to just quickly? I'll say Georgia has built. It's one of the first times ever. Alabama's lost games, but Georgia has constructed a roster that actually is more physically impressive than Alabama's.
Yes.
And it's the first time I think I could say that in 10 years. Now, I was at the Clemson-Alabama game, and I remember walking the sideline. I was like, oh, my God, Clemson is fucked. The first Clemson game, because they did not look like they belong, and they won. But Georgia has duplicated Alabama's blueprint, and it's unusual. Alabama has not been an underdog in 92 games. That is astonishing. Astonishing, and they're an underdog this week. So we could hit this on picks and pints, but I was just going to
just want to ask you one question. Do you trust Georgia's offense?
I'm trusting it more, and if they can block, then yes. Well, here's an interesting question. Do I trust them? If they would have gotten Ohio State, everybody said was the toughest matchup for Georgia,
yes,
because the offense would be productive. Does Georgia's offense have to be very risky in this game? Is I think the most interesting part, because Bryce Young, Alabama's offensive line, skill position talent down. Like, Georgia, I don't think has to play outside of his element, but if you could put Georgia on its heels, you thought Tennessee could do that, and they did do it for a few minutes. Right?
That's sort of what we talked about earlier in the year when they were playing Kentucky, and even Tennessee was the upset pick for them as well, is Georgia has not been in a situation all year where they have been forced to be aggressive. And that
feels Alabama-like, by the way. Pre-Lane Kiffin Alabama team
yes,
is what this feels like.
That changes a lot. That your game plan for things shifts. The situations that players have been in all year long shifts, and it's a much bigger moment. It does make things more challenging. I think people are under the impression that this Georgia team, though physically dominant, is going to be just destroy this Alabama team, and I don't think that happens, because I also watched an average Alabama team, a human, as we say on this podcast, human Alabama team, like, struggle, but still manage to win games.
Oh, no, it's impressive. Like, Alabama's got resolve. I think, and we'll talk about it in Picks and Pines. What shocked me the most, because Georgia has this reputation, Georgia's offense is averaging 2 points less than Alabama's this year. 40 points a game. It's the number 6 scoring offense in the country. They do it differently. It's not as explosive, but they're still scoring.
It's not under pressure, though. They get to execute and take risks and do those things instead of like it. I feel like the environment is just going to shift this so much more, and I feel like that will be where Georgia's downfall is that they have not been challenged in any way.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I want it to be a good. I think maybe the other part of this is I want it to be a good game. Let's get to other games before we tell our betting things on this.
I do have an opinion on Oregon, Utah. I think we have the same opinion.
Yes.
I will say, as a teaser, these two teams played, 2 weeks ago? Oregon got the absolute dog shit kicked out of it. Impressive last week against Oregon State. They should have won that game by much more. They still covered the touchdown spread. Spoiler alert. Environments in college football matter a lot. And I think the environment, a neutral environment, this game's in Vegas, which every college football game should be played in Vegas. I don't care what conference.
Yeah, that's true.
It's going to matter
and college basketball games, by the way. Duke Gonzaga was fantastic.
You know firsthand. Oh, yes. That's a great stadium. So I'm excited for this game because, look, 2 weeks have passed. Oregon lost by 31 points. The spread is the exact same. That's kind of hilarious. In fact, I think it's now 2.5 points. Let me double check.
I will say that Utah travels pretty well. So
they do.
And Vegas is not far. So this game is going to be a good game. In my opinion, it's not going to be the blowout that we thought it. We didn't think that the last one was going to be a blowout. But
I thought the last one was going to be bad. Not that bad. That was bad.
It's going to be a close game, and it actually might be like sort of a really fun game, which is exciting for Pac-12 fans.
We'll hit this again in Picks and Pines.
Yes.
Baylor, OK State. I have struggled to get an opinion on this game all week. The line, 5. There's a 4.5 out there. There's a 5.5 out there. Sponsor us so we can use your sports book specifically. I don't give a shit about the other books. Whatever. We'll use your lines. But there's some movement on this, and it seems like, frankly, the game opened at 6.5. This is going in Baylor's direction. Now, I thought OK State against Oklahoma was good. Missed a lot of tackles. Not as polished as they've been. Maybe an increase in competition, whatever the reason. Oklahoma made some plays, made some catches. Look, if Oklahoma State wins, I want to ask you this. Are they in the playoff? I guess we don't know what's going to happen with Alabama, Georgia. Which
Why don't we just open up the can of worms of the endless possibilities that could happen in the playoff? 1 and 2 are solidified. I think even with...
How dare you?
I mean, it makes me nervous to even say this, but this could potentially be a year where we see a 2-loss team make the playoff. I understand that people will argue that Notre Dame is only losses to Cincinnati, but they didn't play in a playoff game, and you could end up with teams like Oklahoma State cannot lose. They have to be in. They have to win to be in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely.
But a Michigan team that you lost to Michigan State and an Iowa team, or an Alabama team who loses to a Georgia, I don't know.
All right, if Georgia beats Alabama, which they are favored to do, regardless of your Alabama loving ways, yes, and OK State wins, OK State is in the playoff, right? which I think is cool.
The real
and I
chaos,
actually think it would be fun against Georgia. By the way, real quick, an aside. If Georgia loses, is Georgia still the number 1 seed? They give it to Michigan?
I mean, no, I feel like Georgia has to still be the number 1 seed. You lost
I
to
still
Alabama.
think so too.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can't. No. They're only losses to like a team that literally is number 3. Like that just doesn't. I think the real chaos begins if what's so funny is I told you prior to this, my mom's like, "Are you excited to record today?" Because she knows that my brain has just been like functioning on this like all-inclusive college football things all the time. I have no idea what else is going on in the world. But I was thinking about if Michigan loses, if OK State loses, and Alabama loses, like that,
Man.
which it realistically could happen. Like Michigan is, I don't know. Michigan is, I don't know. But I mean,
How dare you.
it's not out of the realm for Alabama.
It's not out of the realm.
And that could.
Well, then Alabama's in, right? I mean, then Alabama's in. If
right, but then what do you do about OK State and Michigan and Notre Dame? Then you have Notre Dame sitting there going, "What the fuck?" And Cincinnati.
Well, Notre Dame's in.
We're forgetting about Cincinnati. We're forgetting about Cincinnati.
And Cincinnati. Well, if Cincinnati loses, OK State loses, and Michigan loses, that is incredibly messy. And since the playoffs started, Conference Championship Weekend has been pretty boring.
Chalk. It's been chalk, and
Pretty
I have
boring.
a feeling this is not that year.
The most interesting thing to happen in the playoff era on Conference Championship Weekend, and I was there, was when Cardell Jones came in for Ohio State, and they beat the living shit out of Wisconsin.
Yep.
Which was wild to see. It was just, you could feel it. There has not been a lot of drama this weekend. So could one of those teams lose? Yes. And a coachless Notre Dame getting in the playoff is pretty interesting.
Even
if that's going to happen.
First of all, can we talk about Barta saying that actually plays a factor in them getting in the playoff, which I think is the most atrocious thing I've ever fucking heard.
That's so bad.
But even 2 of those teams losing, even Alabama and OK State losing, like do you then put you have Cincinnati and Notre Dame in?
I don't think there's much.
But no, I actually, like, you really think looking at a Notre Dame team and the Alabama team, like say Georgia, Alabama only loses to Georgia by a touchdown or a field goal, okay? And you have a Notre Dame team whose only loss is to Cincinnati, but they don't play in a playoff game. And what other quality wins do they have?
Purdue, Wisconsin. Wisconsin now is a quality win. I guess it's less quality now. But
no, because Wisconsin's on a roll.
But they lost to Minnesota. Yeah. Go Hawks.
But again, like that's what I'm saying is like there's so many things that would have to factor into this. Like you can't tell me that you think that this Notre Dame team is better than this year's Alabama team.
Oh no, but I don't want to get into the rabbit hole. Like
why?
This
it's
is
so
the problem
fun.
with the playoff.
Problem.
Well, it's the most deserving and the best. I think Texas A&M is better than Notre Dame, but they've lost a lot of games. So it's like, and it would be favored significant. Ole Miss, right? Like Ole Miss just kind of hanging out.
But again, Alabama's in the top 3 of the rankings right now going into this weekend. So I think our Malort bet is still on the table.
No, I do too, but it would need some help. My thing is that Alabama has looked mortal and has looked LSU mortal, Arkansas mortal. Certainly last week, you could argue they shouldn't have won. So what would have been fun, frankly, is if Alabama lost last week and then beats Georgia.
God.
And then they're in. I mean, but Alabama still controls its own destiny. Obviously, it controls its own fate. I hate the term destiny. And like they're in a position to do this thing. Michigan. I need to talk about Iowa. Michigan.
Okay.
Of course I need to talk. I don't have this game in Picks and Pints. I know a lot of Iowa people who are just thrilled to be here. Also very happy not to be playing Ohio State. Because Iowa just beat the living hell out of Ohio State last time. And like, this would not have gone well. I don't think this is going to go well. I think Michigan is like Iowa, but way better at what they want to do. I don't know what I do with the spread. This sounds weird.
Question. Do you think this has potential to be a hangover game, though?
Yes, that's what I was just going to ask you. Yes.
Me too. I'm so nervous because Michigan's gotten here. I would feel so terrible for Michigan fans to be on the highest of highs and then just plummet to the depths of not being a playoff.
I think Michigan is really physically so much better than Iowa in so many places. Offensively explosive. Like Iowa, quietly played a horrendous game against Nebraska and should have lost. Right? I don't think this is going to go well for Iowa, but I'm excited to see it. I think it'll be they are a team of chaos. They seem to thrive in these situations.
Yes.
We'll see what happens. But
I think the momentum needs to be in their favor early, and if Iowa can get to that Iowa defense can get to them a little early, that might be an issue. All right. Because we saw that they were able to be a little bit more aggressive against Ohio State because they had a lead and then also just decided to run the ball, which props to them because that was the best game plan. But I don't know that you'll be able to play that safe.
Iowa's offensive line is bad. Iowa's defensive line is not nearly as good. This is not good.
It could get ugly. It could be just an absolute blowout, but it could be a hangover game. Anyway, let's get to the other ones.
Last one, Pitt, Wake.
I can't wait to watch this game.
Okay, we have in our Picks and Pints. Let's start with Picks and Pints.
Okay.
By the way, I had 2 beers.
Different beers.
I had a Maplewood and I had a Two Hearted. I believe I've done these two. They're delightful. The wine last week was probably most enjoyable. Wine thematically, it's like a thought drink. I can just kind of stir it around. Drank not a whole bottle, but a half a bottle. I'm going to get something good here for the bowl season. We're going to load up and be excellent for the bowl season. So, Wake, Pitt. We haven't broken it down. Picks and Pints. Wake is a 3-point dog. Pitt, the old total in this game is 72.5, I believe. But let me check the updated total. What do you like in this game? We are both invested. We're not going up against each other, but we both have picks here.
We both have picks here. I struggled with this one a lot because my heart really, really, really wanted to go with Pickett because you got your Pickett ticket, and I do love him, and I think he's phenomenal. But I think Wake Forest has something to prove a little bit in the sense that they just extended their coach. They kept him. This is a new era. I think this is a very passionate play, and people have forgotten about them a lot because of the Heisman candidate across the field. So I do think that Wake Forest will have something to prove here and will come out and win. So I took Wake +3.
I am going to go over. That has come down to 71.5, which is good. I think both these offenses should cook. I think both these quarterbacks have been excellent.
Yes.
It's not a game that has playoff implications.
No,
but it's going to be one of the more enjoyable games of the year. So I struggle with the side here, but I kind of lean with you. Wake is resilient.
No joke.
They are a resilient team. They battle. I think they could be up for this. All right.
Yes.
We are on the same page for 2 games. Oregon +3, Oregon +3. We both like Oregon. I just think, again, venue is a huge deal. Oregon, some games just go sideways, Paige, right? Some games you start losing and you lose a lot and just shit happens.
Yep.
Well, you're in Vegas. Utah does travel really well. That's a good point. Oregon got right last week. They're a much better team than they showed. Utah at home.
They have also a lot of players that are healthy now. Oregon is getting a lot of talent back.
This is one of my favorite plays of the weekend. Honestly, Oregon +3. In fact, I think that line, let me double check. That line had been bet down to 2.5. I grabbed it early because I was worried about that. There's some 2.5, some 3 out there. Okay. But 2.5 at DraftKings, that's a big move if you're moving off of 3. App State. We are both on App State, correct?
Yes.
They're good.
2.5. They are.
Yes.
They're also
they're
fun
favored
to watch.
over a team that's won a bazillion games in a row. I wanted to ask you this because I wrote about it. How do you, and this is hard. I've done this. We do it in bowl season. We do it with interim coaches. How do you handicap Louisiana's motivation in this game? Their coach is leaving Florida.
Yeah.
Napier is going to coach in this game. That can't not have an impact here, though, no?
Well, because to your point with LSU, with Ed Orgeron, which is so funny to say his full name. I don't think I've ever called him that ever.
It's weird.
This is a little different because it's not like your coach is leaving and going to take that. This is the end. This is your coach is leaving for a better job. So there's really not much there. And I think App State just feeds on this stuff, and I think
agree.
they're gonna swarm them and just make them a mockery of that and be like, all right, you're headed to Florida, see you later. But yeah, it's a tough. I mean, I think too there are some people that will argue that like, oh, players will want to win for him, blah blah. But really, do they? He's leaving them. So
it's two of the hottest teams in college football. Honestly, it's just a good game. I just think App State is better, and defensively, I think they're going to win that game. All right, we are going head to head here. I like Houston plus 10.5. You like Cincinnati minus 10.5. I'll give you my 2 cents. I don't feel great about this game. Again, it's one of the harder things as a gambler with championship weekend is you just have less games to bet on. Yeah. So you have to kind of morph into it. I think Dana Holgerson is just like his don't give a fuck mentality is perfect for this. He's run out of fucks to give a long time ago.
Yeah.
They're playing for a playoff spot. Houston's just playing to be relevant. And they've talked about one of the hottest teams in football. They're good. They play some defense. I think Cincinnati wins. I think Houston has a chance to at least keep it close.
Yeah. I think Cincinnati can control what they can control right now and are going to need to score some points. And I think they're well aware of that because there is chaos that could it would take a lot for them to be knocked out, but it's not out of the realm of that happening. So no. If I were them, I'm scoring literally all the points that I can and putting up the best game possible for that last little resume booster for the committee, in my opinion. So that's what I think they have to play for. And I think we have not seen that a ton this year. We've seen them get big leads and then blow them and make things close. So I'm hoping that this weekend they really hone in on that. So I'm really, really, really betting on them to go full force.
All right, last
step on their throat mentality.
I like it. Dana's done that. He does that on a weekend. Georgia, Alabama, 6.5 is the line. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
I'm taking Alabama.
So that could be it. Obviously, people who've listened to this podcast know the allegiance is here.
Yes.
Does the Iron Bowl game concern you, though?
Yeah. Yes.
It absolutely. Has to. That's a dumb question.
Oh, totally.
But what element of is it? Like where? Like I thought Bryce Young battled his ass off. By the way, I mean he didn't have much to work with. His O-line was bad. I like Georgia. All right, let's just rip the band-aid off. I like Georgia minus 6.5.
I like Alabama. Okay, I said that I never would bet against Alabama. Here's the thing. I think Alabama covers the spread. I don't know that I have Alabama winning this game. If they can be extremely disciplined, which they have not been, I think they have a chance. So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah.
If Georgia, if they can keep Georgia from scoring, then they'll be okay.
The total in this game is fascinating at 49.5. That's low. Like, these teams can score. Now, Georgia's defense has given up 83 points all year.
But what was the final score of the Georgia-Clemson game?
Like 7.
It was low.
-5.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think this is going to be similar to that.
The problem, I don't know if Alabama's defense is great. Arkansas scored a lot of points.
They're not great.
LSU scored some. Now, Auburn sucks, okay? Auburn's a tough example. Sans Bo Nix, Auburn. Mm-hmm. And they just fired their offensive coordinator, which tells you all you need.
But also, they were playing at Auburn, which is a very strange place to play.
I agree. I think Alabama's going to play better.
Oh, absolutely.
I think Georgia is just that team that's constructed to be good.
I also would argue that there is a coaching element to this, and there is somebody across from Kirby Smart that knows him well enough to know and can outcoach the shit out of him.
Well, I don't disagree with that. And I do think philosophically, I'm curious to see how Georgia comes out because Alabama has owned Georgia. And I think that could work out well for Georgia in them saying it's time. And I think they could be up for it, or I think they could be psyched out. There is absolutely an element of that will be fascinating to see.
Give me a repeat of that national championship with Tua Jalen. Give it to me. Give me that repeat of it being that close. And personally, I think it will be. I think it'll be close.
All right. So we are different. We are the same. We've talked a lot. Any parting shots? We got an awesome weekend of football. I'm super excited. Any parting shots before we head out?
No, I just like literally cannot wait. Playoff is going to be crazy. Next time we talk, we're going to have the Final Four and be able to really break that down. Bowl season is here. I can't believe it.
I know.
What a crazy, crazy couple of weeks. And to think that like the narratives that we were talking about weeks ago just like don't even apply because of all the stuff that has happened. I expect myself to be mad online again about the playoff in some capacity this weekend.
Yes.
But wow. I mean, what a crazy regular season we have had.
2 words. Best sport. Best sport.
3 words.
That's
best
it.
damn sport.
Best damn sport. I'm pumped for this week. We'll be writing, like you mentioned. We'll be talking about next week. There's who knows, coaching changes, playoff. We'll talk bowls. We've got a ton of stuff. I actually love this part of the college football season because you kind of catch your breath. You can dig into some bowl games that are going to be really, really. Some of the matchups are going to be great. So
I will for sure be drinking on next week's show because we will have finished regular season and gotten into the craziness of everything.
I'm telling you right now, Saturday night post writing, that's always a celebration.
Sunday though, Selection Sunday. You don't have to write on Sunday. I do have to work on Sunday, but
no, but I have. I think it's great.
Attention. By the way, Best Damn Sport is going to be our name for this episode.
Best Damn Sport. I'm in.
All right,
so subscribe, follow, spam, share. We appreciate the support. We'll keep spitting these things out. We have some fun stuff to talk about too when it comes to the national championship and some different pod things. Just saying. So we'll get to that next week and beyond. For Paige, I'm Adam. We will talk to you guys next week.